It's the bird emergency, and it's something different this time. It's Photography Friday. It's Photography Friday. James and Ewen. James from Sydney Bird Baths, and Ewen Bell from, God, everything. Where are we designating you from, Ewen?
Well, I'm from the south. I'm from south of the border, our division. At the moment, I'm on Collins Street.
I just wondered whether you wanted to be pigeonholed as photography blogger. What did we say you were? Commissioning editor, or?
I'm just an editorial photographer. I shoot travel. I shoot a wide range of things. But I do love the birds because everywhere you travel, the birds are part of the scene. And it's always great just to stop and take it in.
And why I thought it would be great to get Ewen to talk about photography is that he does have that experience. It's not only with birds and with wildlife, but also what's required to do good travel shots and lifestyle shots and all that kind of stuff. So if you're looking to be a blogger or an influencer, over time you'll find something of use with Ewan's tips. He doesn't know that he's going to be roped into all of this, but I've got him, and there he is. Now, James is here because Ewen and James recently were collaborating, for want of a better term. They were on a good initiative, I think, Ewen, for the bird watching crowd who want to become better photographers. The Lumix parrot walks. Now, tell us what was the genesis of the Lumix parrot walks before we talk about where they were and when they were.
Yeah, let me clarify just for James. James was one of the guests when we ran the Sydney Parrot Walk. And as it turns out, James had a wonderful social media presence as a Sydney bird bath, where we got to see all the birds that came to his bird bath in the middle of Sydney every day. So James had his own audience there, and I was actually working with the Parrot of the Day people to put together the parrot walks. And the concept of the parrot walks was actually pretty simple, in that you don't have to go out bush to find some beautiful birds. They're right here in the middle of our cities, all of our cities. Whether we're talking Perth or Brisbane or Sydney to Melbourne to Darwin, the birds are in the middle of the cities and they're actually pretty easy to find. And we paired that up with the team at Panasonic, who have the Lumix G9, was a camera that they had just come out with. It looks like this. That's a Lumix G9 there. And that lens there, that tiny little lens, is the same as an 800mm lens on an SLR. And that's a pretty easy way to go hunting parrots and to get some great shots. And we ran this really fun little workshop where we get to take people out to try out the camera gear, to think about how they're going to shoot birds, and try to give them a chance to get closer to the birds using this camera technology. And that's where I met James. Hi, James.
Hi. Yes, I really enjoyed that parrot walk, and I ended up purchasing that exact lens after trying it with my own. I think I even might have had Ewan's personal copy of the lens on my camera, and was filming some lovely birds in the trees and powerful owls and things like that, and I ended up going and getting that lens. So it's fantastic.
So, James, does that mean that you are using the Lumix G9?
No, well, I really liked the G9, but I already have a GH5, which is their video equivalent, and it's a slightly older model, but it's quite good. It's missing a few of the photography advanced features of the G9, but for my sort of work, it's really good, and it works perfectly with that lens.
Now, you've used the word work. Now, with Sydney bird baths, I'm assuming that was all pleasure and honing your technique. Bird bath shots have become all the rage, haven't they? I mean, I'm having withdrawals from the Tasmanian bird bath that hasn't shown up recently. But I was watching what you were putting up, James, and of course you haven't been up so much lately because you obviously relocated.
Well, the birds haven't started frequenting the bird bath yet properly, partly because it's not set up fully. I don't have enough surrounding nature around it set up, but also the birds aren't used to it, and they were scared of the dogs that used to live in this garden. But it's starting to happen. I actually got a bird last week, and so, yeah, it's not far off. And I've been doing other bird shots in between.
How long have you been in your new place?
just over a year. So we moved in the middle of the pandemic, which was a very interesting time to move.
And that gives an indication that it takes the birds quite a while to find a suitable location. They get used to watering, to drinking in the same place. If there are threats, predators around, that gets imprinted. And you probably need to almost have a new generation of birds discovering your place. The old birds who already know it's a no-go zone just may not ever come in. So,
well, the magpie that came down to the birdbath a few months ago was a baby, and the magpie lark was one that comes into the garden to eat insects out of the grass. So it is definitely what you're saying. I think that it's a trust thing, but also it's waiting for a dry patch. And I think since we moved to Coffs Harbour, we brought the rain with us because it's just been raining constantly ever since we moved here. But it's better than bushfire smoke.
Exactly. Ewen, you mentioned the parrot of the day people. Expand on the parrot of the day people.
So there's a really nice bloke who started this account called Parrot of the Day. And the idea was that there's either slightly more or slightly less than 365 species of parrots in the world. So I think it's slightly more. So there's enough parrots in the world that every day you can show a new parrot. And so he would basically take photos of parrots from a library and put them up every day. And then he started to go out and to shoot his own, and he's got plenty of great shots himself. And he also reshares pictures of parrots that other people put onto Twitter, and he'll share that out again. And so the parrot of the day for me was one of the really great things about social media, where you're focusing on something that's really positive. You might not be changing the world, but you are getting to tune into what's really important and tune into what's really lovely about the world that we're in, and to spend a little bit more time in that part of the world instead of at the Ozpol hashtag or something like that, because it's grim on Ozpol.
It's nice to just be a bit of a smart ass on Oz sometimes. I mean, sometimes you have to laugh or you just would cry.
Yeah. And so the parrot of the day was great, and it was really celebrating how great parrots were. And he's kind of a marketing person. He's got a marketing background. He came up with a logo and he started to brand it a bit, and things have really taken off. So my idea was, I knew plenty about photography, and I knew there were people who knew more about birds than I did. And so I just wanted to bring a group of photography people to step across into the bird world and see how easy it is to find them, how utterly rewarding it is to spend some time with these birds. And the great things with these cameras is that it's not like the old days where you had to have an 800mm lens that was like the size of the back of your ute, and that you had to have a tripod to hold it and stuff. You can carry that handheld and to walk about with this and just take a shot when something happens. It's really easy, and you get amazing photos. The rewards are there.
James, are you an avid follower of Parrot of the Day?
Absolutely, yeah. That was one of the first accounts that I noticed when I went onto Twitter, and I think that's how I found Ewen as well, through that. So yeah, definitely, it's a fantastic account to follow.
I like Parrots of the Day a lot for a couple of reasons. One is that I always learn something that I didn't really know about the parrots, and I got given Parrots of the World by Forshaw and Cooper when I was about 11 or 12. So I was studying all these unbelievable parrots as a little kid that I always dreamed that I would see. The reunion parrot, the society parakeet, and the kakarikis as they were called back then. And now to see them in really natural poses, just doing parrot things. In some of the shots are not real great, but that doesn't matter because they're a real study in nature. But what I've also noticed is that the individual in question, Ewen, that you said was a very knowledgeable fellow, and he certainly is, his photography has just come ahead in leaps and bounds. I've really noticed in the last 2 years, and that you kind of feel like you're involved, and it's like the Hungry Parrots as well. That's just getting better and better. And there's a whole heap of people. And one day they'll be giving a run for his money.
Yeah, look, I think that when you have a passion for your subject and you really connect with the subject, and you go out and you spend time, and the more time you spend with your subject, the more you care about it. I think that comes through within the photography. Really great photography is not about cameras. It's about that connection you have with your subject.
Wanted to ask you, Ewan, about the kind of camera you need to begin. The prices have really come down for new cameras, but there's also a huge amount of things that are out there in the second-hand market. So should somebody now just, if they're looking to get started in bird photography or wildlife nature photography, where do you think they should start when they're selecting a camera?
Well, that's a pretty broad question.
Well,
how long is a piece of string?
Well, let me put a couple of limitations on it. If money is no object, where would you go? And if somebody was, and I'll put my hand up to this, I want to spend sub $1,000 to get started, and I want a camera that I can also use when I'm doing the podcast, when I'm doing inside stuff for streaming. Now, nearly everything is able to be streamed, so I want something that I can use for do 4K output, but is robust enough to get out there. So do I want mirrorless? I was looking at Lumix. Now there's a model which is around $400. Is that worth buying? Or do I save my bickies and step up? Are the Nikons, are the Canon DSLRs, are the EOS or the D series worth considering?
Look, I don't think it matters what brand you choose. It does matter what lens you pick, but the brand of camera is less important than which camera within their range that you're picking. Clearly for me, I think that the G9 is a great camera to do the job. And for me, when the G9 came out, it was the first of the Micro Four Thirds that actually gave me the power to do the things that I was trying to do. Because prior to that, the Micro Four Thirds, trying to see through the viewfinder was the major constriction. It was so small. And I think, James, one of the differences between the G9 and the GH5 is that if you're using the viewfinder through the GH5, it's a smaller viewfinder. It's harder to see what you're looking at. Did you see a difference when you used the G9?
I think it was a bit better, and I can't remember what the main features were. I think it was the locking onto subjects type features that are better, like when you're trying to video a moving object. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Panasonic viewfinders, even in mine, are still better than like the Sony. I have a Sony A7 III, which is it's an entry level full frame camera, but it's meant to be a pretty good camera. But I find the viewfinder a lot nicer because it's real time, it's image stabilized properly, and it doesn't pixelate as much. And yet my camera is the Panasonic camera is about 3 or 4 years older. So yeah, so I'm a big Panasonic fan, even though I invest in Sony as well.
Yeah. I think the hard thing is the difference in the technology within a single camera brand is so broad. It's so hard to shop. And the way I try to help people when they ask me is that I say, here's one way that it's going to work. Here's one camera system, one package that'll get the job done. It doesn't mean it's the only way. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. But the results I've gotten off the G9, I could never have gotten off my SLR gear. I just would never have gotten the same kind of results. Now, if you only have $1,000 to spend, that's tricky. That changes the whole ball game. If I think
what do I need to get a G and the lens that you would recommend for me heading over to the park and then doing Merry Creek and the Botanic Gardens and whatnot?
Brand new, you're looking at around about $3,500 to $3,500, depending on the street price on any given day. So $3,500 is the lens plus the camera. Now that's not a lot for something that's going to shoot 60 frames per second raw, that's got a pre-burst mode, that's got a high-res mode so that if you put it on a tripod, you can capture an 80 megapixel image using the pixel shift mode. It's got a lot of features. The stabilization, it'll shoot 180 frames per second video so that if you want HD high-speed capture for your video, you can get 180 frames per second, which you then play back at 25 frames per second, and now you've got this ultra slow motion of a bird taking off or something like that. It's got a lot of features. For $3,500, the camera itself is only around about $1,600 and the lens is around about $1,900.
So the lens is probably the sticking point. Is there a sort of entry level lens that you can use to practice to build your skills and then trade up?
Yeah. There's a lot of gear that you can get. Rather than getting the 100 to 400, you could just get a 300mm lens or a 200mm lens. There's a lot of lenses to choose from that'll go partway towards that holy grail kind of a top shelf version. Hey, there's a lens that's been brought out by Olympus that costs $12,000 that will go on the G9, and it will give you effectively, I think the native on the lens will go out to 1200mm. So you're looking at a ridiculous amount of telephoto. If you want to spend the money, you can go beyond what I'm shooting with the same thing. The point is, put your money into the lens, put more money into the lens than the camera body. That's my golden rule.
Is there a step down from the G9 in the Lumix range?
You'd have to go to an older camera, really. The G9 kind of broke the mold with Panasonic. They just put everything worthwhile. In the same way that the GH5 is such a great camera for video, the G9 is such a great camera for stills. Although I use my G9 to capture video too, because it's not quite as good as the GH5, but it's pretty handy, and it does do the 180 frames per second. So
I think it's good enough. Yeah, it's good enough. I had a look at the specs, and I was quite impressed with what I saw. But I don't know if it's limited to 29 minutes, though, 30 minutes limit on the video. Because for my videos, I tend to set up the camera and just leave it running with external power, and then edit the footage later, because the birds will be scared away from the bird bath if I'm standing there filming. So they're completely human involved. There's no involvement with humans. I don't ever feed them or lure them in any way. I just have to wait patiently.
That's a really great point that you're making there. And one of the things I loved about the bird bath when it was in Sydney and you saw all the currawongs and all the other birds coming through was that so much of the bird photography relies on bird calls or bird feeding to bring them in. And I have a bit of an issue with this because I don't know where that line is where you go far. There are times I see people who definitely go too far. Like I saw a guy in Royal Parade who was in the same spot for 2 hours calling in pardalotes, and I saw his pictures go up on Facebook the next day, and I had to block him on my social media because it just made me mad that he was hammering that little bird for 2 hours with a bird call so that he could look good for his photography. And there's an ethical issue there. And where is the line? There's clearly a difference between him calling for 2 hours and the average person who plays a call for 2 minutes to get their shot of a pardalote. But where is that line? And that what James is doing with the bird bath, where you're simply providing the resource they need, the water, to come in, and they'll come in when they're comfortable and you're going to get some shots, is really different to like that heavy bird calling. And just as an aside, the parrots, I don't think there's any parrots that respond to bird calls. They're really bad at that. They're too smart and they work it out and they don't respond to bird calls.
And they're hanging out in their own group. I think they know who's talking to them. And we're streaming out, which was part of the experiment, to see who would come in. We do have somebody who's asked the same question that I asked you before we went live. Ewen, why are you in black and white?
So apart from the fact that my skin is terrible and I can put on the red filter here and it makes me look as though I'm slightly better cared for than I really am, I do all of my online workshops in black and white, and it's kind of a joke because when I first started up in the photography business, my tagline was, it's never just black and white. And that's the point. There's always more to the story than what you see. It's never just black and white. So I thought I'd present myself in black and white when I'm online.
For Jesse, who asked, I think it's a classic look in the film noir style. I mean, very, very elegant there compared to me with I've got the blotchy red going today, yeah.
I also give it the thumbs up. I think it looks great, and I think I'll set up a proper DSLR next time so I can push out the focus at the back as well.
Well, James, if you just use the video output into a capture card off your GH5, you can set the output. You can just control the picture style, and that's how I'm getting the black and white. And you can go for something where you reduce the saturation and pump up the contrast, or you can play with your picture style and just use that to stream with. And actually, Grant, one of the reasons that the GH5 is a better camera for what James is doing than, say, the G9, that the G9 will tend to overheat trying to do what James is doing, whereas it will actually can go for hours without getting too hot.
I can be a testament to that, because when the really huge heat waves were on before the fires really got going, I was filming and it was like 42 degrees outside. And I had the camera outside on the balcony with the afternoon sun actually beating down onto the concrete. So there was like this micro thing, and it was so hot. And the GH5 kept going. And I've also got a G85, which is a kind of cheap version, a much lower end camera, and that thing overheated. And that's by Panasonic, but it overheated because it's a cheaper entry level.
Yeah, that's right. It's harder to actually design the gear to dissipate that heat. And so a cheaper camera body, that's one of the reasons they cap the recording at, say, 10 minutes or half an hour or something, because they know that under certain kinds of conditions, it's just going to get too hot and the camera will shut down.
And I actually had an external power supply, and it actually fried that. So it actually blew up the power supply on the balcony. Yeah, the camera was fine, but the power supply blew up. Yeah.
And for people overseas, now James is in Sydney, or he's actually further north now. He's up on the north coast of New South Wales. So that's about roughly halfway up the Australian continent. You and I are both down on the southern end in the southeast corner. Now, we're going into winter and we're going to have below zero temperatures in the morning when we go out and walk around our lawns. But in summer, I mean, it's not uncommon now to go to 45, 46 in summer. So any of our electrical gear, anything that we take outside, has to be really robust. And they're not extraordinary temperatures anymore. Remember, Ewen, where if it went to 38 when we were kids, everyone was, oh, it's so hot. And now I think the last 3 summers we've had days above 45, and a couple of them. And we're in the south of the continent. So for people who are in the inland and whatnot, they're pushing 48, 50 degrees in a situation where you're on a bitumen road or on any kind of concrete or whatnot. The radiant heat must be pushing things. I'm afraid to even think about it.
Well, they're some of the best days of the year for videoing, because the birds are all, like the parrots are panting their tongues out. Yeah, and they want to go to the bird bath. So there was one day it was so hot I actually shot through the window of the balcony door, because it was just too hot to risk the gear being outside.
But it's a testament to the build quality of the gear you've got, James. If you set it up outside and it keeps going through a hot summer, because our summers are very hot.
Now, let me tell you the flip side to that, though. The GH5's a great camera, James, but I like the G9 because I can shoot at minus 35 and keep going for like 3 hours on one battery. So I've got a time lapse of the Aurora in Norway where I simply put the camera on a tripod in the snow and just basically stuck it in the snow and just let the camera run for 3 hours. And then in the morning, I came out to retrieve my camera to see exactly what it had captured. And the whole thing was covered in frost. It was like a white block of ice. And the camera was fine, the gear was fine, and I had a beautiful 3-hour sequence of all the northern lights dancing in the sky. So these cameras are incredible, the conditions that they can.
Ewan, I want to ask one more question about what might be best for me with the dual purpose. And with the GH9, that's the one. No, sorry, is it James? Whatever. What's James? Would that be a better option for me initially, wanting to do the streaming and photography, and then save up my bickies for the?
No, it's more expensive.
Is it really?
Oh yeah, it's an older model, but it's a very expensive camera. I paid about $3,200, I think, for just the body.
Wow.
Yeah.
You need to understand, Grant, that what you're doing with streaming is very easy to achieve. You don't need 4K, and a lot of stuff can do 4K, and 4K is not that hard to achieve. But it's all the data flow that the camera can achieve. It's the quality of the image. It's what the sensor can do. It's the fact that it can keep shooting on a 45-degree day in the middle of the sun and not stop and break. The streaming goal is easy. Any camera will deliver a HD feed for your stream.
And to take basic snappy shots when you're out on location. This is me doing this, not concentrating on bird photography. Is a mirrorless, like that seems to be all the trend at the moment. Is that better than me going down and getting a EOS or a D series secondhand? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think, again, you put your money into the lens because you'll change your camera body from time to time. But if you buy a good lens, you'll keep it for a very long time, much longer than your camera. So to give you the comparison, if I think back to around about 18 years ago, and I got a contract to do some work with a tourism NT, and I was going up there with Andrew Stafford, was the expert who was tagged in to find the birds, and I was there to shoot the birds. And I decided to use this particular project to upgrade my camera gear. And I bought a Canon 40D at the time, and I bought a 300mm prime lens with a 1.4 adapter. So that's kind of a mouthful there. But a Canon 40D was a partial frame SLR, but it had a reasonably good autofocus. And because it's a partial frame, when you put a 300mm lens on a Canon 40D, you're getting like a 560mm perspective. And that's pretty handy. And then if you put a 1.4 adapter on that, you're basically getting out to something like 680 or something like that was the net effect that you're getting. And so for not much money, you've got a partial frame camera, you've got a prime lens, so you've got some quality, but also you've got some reach. Because with birds, you always want to get as close as you can. I've got the 100 to 400 that gives me like an 800mm reach, but I always use it at 800. Like I don't shoot it back at the other end. It's always at the longest length, right? Because the birds are too small and I can't get close enough. Ever. So you always want to get closer and use that maximum reach. So back then, 20 years ago, a Canon 40D with the 300mm prime was an affordable way to get some reasonable reach, and the frame rate was okay. That equation hasn't changed. You can still get a really good result with that. You can get a secondhand 40D or a 70D or a 7D. These are all really good cameras if you want to shoot birds, and they will do some other functions. You can just put on the wide angle lens and shoot some landscape scenes as well. That's not a problem. But if you want to shoot birds, you just need the longest lens you can get your hands on, and you need an autofocus system that's going to get you in the game. They're the two major things you want to weigh up, and spend your money on the lens, spend as much as you can on the lens, not the camera body. That's number one for me, because you'll keep the lens.
Yep. So I hear what you're saying with the lens. I didn't hear you say mirrorless once. So
right. So the flip side is, if you buy that kind of system and you get like a second-hand SLR, you've now got a lens that you're committed to that platform, okay? And that's kind of the downside, because there's going to come a time when Canon no longer make the camera bodies to match that lens. They're going to change over to their mirrorless system, and those lenses won't work quite as well on the new system as they do their native system. And that's where the G9 came in. For me, that price and that size and that weight, the camera with the lens weighs less than a 70 to 200 on an SLR camera. So it's taking up the same space in the bag that a 70 to 200 lens alone would take up. And I can put it in the bag. And so you might as well get this instead of a better lens for your current SLR, is the argument which I would make. This camera, you can plug it into the USB port to charge up. You'll get a whole day shooting birds with one charge. They're amazing. Like I'm really surprised how much I get out of one charge on these cameras. And you'll get better pictures than if you have a heavier camera system, and the quality is still fantastic.
Well, I hear you. I think I'm saving up my bickies. I need some more clients.
I just wish everybody used mirrorless, though, because I have mine on silent mode, and then if I go out birding with some friends, they're clicking away with their SLRs, and it drives me crazy because I'm in video mode most of the time. So I'm just getting all these click sounds, and it's very annoying. Whereas mirrorless, you can put it on silent mode, and the latest mirrorless technologies have really good silent mode now. Like those new Panasonic bodies that they make, what are they called? The latest generation,
the full film. The S series, they're beautiful. They're amazing cameras.
Like the silent mode on them, I imagine, is really good.
Yeah, we were shooting because my wife also is a photographer, and she does lots of food and lifestyle shoots. And she was shooting on a TV set horror cooking show, and so she was shooting the stills for the show, but was able simply to go to turn it silent and take shots during the filming while they're recording something that's going to be broadcast. And she could shoot all of her stuff and shoot the behind the scenes and then jump in and shoot some food. And it's like she wasn't there. No one could tell that she was there. She's not actually interfering with anything.
Yeah, because it's totally silent. Whereas the old DSLRs, they would say that they have a silent mode, but it was almost as loud as the full click. It was just a little bit quieter.
Well, the flip side is that whenever I look through the lens and point that lens at a bird, whether it's silent or not, they're watching me. They can see what my lens is doing. They notice I have pointed the lens at them and they respond.
Oh, yeah,
they absolutely are doing.
Yeah.
This idea that we can sneak up on birds and stuff, it's like, it's rubbish. You cannot sneak up on any bird. It's not a thing. They either allow you into their space or they don't.
And I think what we forget as people is that the vision of the birds in most cases is immeasurably superior to ours. They see and hear us a long time before we are aware of them. And you're dead right, Ewan. They make a choice. They allow us in or they don't. So, James, I want to ask you another question about how you do your bird bath shots or videos before we go back and revisit the parrot walk. How do you set up the camera on a tripod outside? Do you, if it's likely to maybe have a shower of rain or something, have you got a little canopy and whatnot for it? How do you do it?
Well, in Sydney, it was a beautiful setup because it was an enclosed balcony with a really good sheltered position right near the door. And I put a reasonably long lens on, so I wasn't too close to the bird bath. So if the birds were splashing the water, it wouldn't hit the camera. So it was a luxurious situation. The difficulties I had, of course, with that, having a bit of distance between the camera and the bird bath, is I'd have to put a separate microphone right next to the bird bath. And that microphone would actually get wet. So I had a big furry, what they call a dead cat, which is a windscreen on it, and that would get wet and I'd have to kind of dry it out. If they'd had a few currawongs came along and had a big swim, the microphone would get drenched. But having the microphone really close to them made the biggest difference. That's why you could hear the bird. Its little feet were walking around the edge of the bird bath, or a cockatoo would come and land on the edge of the bird bath and you'd hear it sort of bang onto the edge. And so people think that you're standing there with an iPhone right next to it. So I wasn't. So
how about the syncing up of your sound with your vision? Is that difficult to do?
I am very low tech. I don't have any sound syncing anything. I just make a clicking sound before I turn the camera off. I basically just make a few tap sounds and then stop the camera recording and stop the audio recording, and then I line up the little click sounds in the post. And as long as you've got your clocks fairly similar, so you can kind of align the time and date, then you can sync it up pretty easily. But I don't use time code. I'm quite low tech. Unmute.
You weren't actually connecting the audio input directly to the camera feed. They were separate.
No, that's
devices.
right, because it was kind of it was about 3 meters distance, and it would be trailing along the ground, and we're walking on and off the balcony, and I just knew it would get tripped over. So I just ended up just putting a little Zoom sound audio recorder on a $100 recorder on its tripod.
Like an H1?
Yeah, I've used H1s quite a lot, and the actual one I was using was a Roland R005 recorder. It's a really good recorder. Really good. You can't even buy them anymore, and it was really low noise for its day. It was made about 10 years ago, super low noise, and then I would just manually sync it up.
We can totally geek out on the sound gear. I've got a Zoom H6N, which is
got one of them as well,
which is great. But if I was going to do what you're doing, James, I think I would probably get one of the really long shotgun directional. And
that was the trick with the Sydney bird bath. There was a block of units behind those trees that was in focus. I had there was only a tiny focal plane that I could use where the birds were in focus and the units were out of focus. And it was just a complete illusion because there was a massive block of units just behind there. And all the sound and the people standing on their balconies having smokes and watering the garden. So I pretty well only could use the option that I used.
Yeah,
There wasn't much freedom.
I guess we're veering away from photography for a second, but those shotgun mics, some of them are so good that you don't realise the peripheral noises, even though they're not from the outside, they're from the direct line of sight, but you can hear some amazing things. If people have got those mics and they're pointing at you, they can hear what you're saying from a very long way away.
There's no noise behind you so that so you're not picking it up from the same direction, then it will work. Like if you're pointing it up into a tree at a bird, then yes, that will work, but not when there's any traffic. Like if there was a road behind the person and the car driving past, then it would be no advantage. You'd actually just pick up the car sound.
Yeah, because they're so sensitive. They're really good. Like the Sennheisers or even the Rode NTG is pretty. What is it? The NTG 300 or 350, the long one. That's pretty great.
T3.
It might be the NT3, the new model. Yeah, I think that might be right. Ewen, the parrot walks, the Lumix parrot walks. You did them in 3 cities, is that right?
Yeah, we had like a couple of years where we ran some. We ran a couple here in the CBD where we would get the group to meet up in a camera store and then just take a tram up to Royal Park, and not hard to find parrots up there. We did them in Perth, and Perth has got Kings Park, and so that was just a beautiful, just such a great park there, and so many birds there to look at. We did them in Sydney as well, and that was how I met James. Sydney was a little bit tricky. We ended up, it was kind of a dry summer, if I recall that one, and the way I plan these things is that I try to do them for the winter time. So in the winter time, it's cooler. The birds that are in the city are basically coming into the flowering gums. It's quite easy to find them. And of course, by the time I get the idea up with Panasonic and they've got to go through their internal process to approve something, then by the time they put the rubber stamp on it, and now it's summer, it's in the middle of October, it's the worst month of the year to look for parrots in the city, because they've either gone south to cooler climes or they go where the food is. Awesome. Parrots. You've got to know where the food is, and where they're eating and what they're eating. And the thing with Royal Park here in Melbourne is that they planted a whole bunch of different species of flowering gums from different parts of the country. So there are gums that flower there throughout the winter, and then it's a different range of gums that flower in the summer, and the same in autumn, spring. And so there's always flowering gums with something to offer the parrots at any time of year. And that's why the birds really love this part of town. And I believe it's got the highest diversity of species of anywhere in the country. And it's just because of the flowering gums.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Now, Ewen, what's the future of the parrot walks?
Well, we haven't done much for that in a while. And of course, with COVID, everything got shut down. So I'm not sure whether we've got the political will to start it all up again. And also for me, I'm enjoying doing less. I know COVID has been an absolute disaster for lots of people's lives. And for me, just to step into that mode where I do less and actually enjoy just some quiet time with nature has been really great. Like the previous week, I got to do a shoot up in Swan Hill, and for like an hour a day, I got to walk along this little patch of river, and I saw the same azure kingfishers were just in the same spot every hour, every day, and I got to do a whole series of shots of these same little tiny birds, and it was way more fun than actually getting paid to go to work. So maybe we need a kingfisher walk instead of a parrot walk. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the collaborative aspect, I think, of getting a bunch of people who are loosely connected, that social connection that we get through bird Twitter, I think is a good idea. Not making it like work is the key.
Yeah. The hard part is that on the one hand, we still would like to have an income. And on the other hand, we don't want to focus our whole life on trying to make an income. And so where do our talents and where do our creative goals go? And when it comes to birds, for me, that's a creative goal. It's part pleasure, it's part creativity. And the more you make it work, are you taking away what makes it special in the process?
Yeah. James, are you making a career out of bird baths?
No, I work for a software company in America. I just work from home. I was doing it before it was trendy. And so that's why I could just go and set the camera up and get it all recording and then go back to the computer. And then a few hours later, just make sure that no one's stolen the camera and stop the recording, start it again just to break the files up. It makes it a bit easier to edit them. But I'd put a 512 gig SD card, two of them, or one of them and maybe a smaller one in the GH5. and it would just fill up this with 100 megabits per second video, 4K video. So you'd have like huge, and then I got really good at just skimming video files really fast and then just throwing them away and only keeping the ones that had something decent on it. If it was just minor birds coming down for a drink, then just trash it. But if some cockatoo was having a fight with rainbow lorikeet or something, then I'd keep it. So
very good. Very good. Well, we might wrap it up there. James, it's been great to cyber meet you. There'll be some coughs, bird bath.
I'm getting excited about doing it again now we've done this conversation.
That's great. That's
great. I'm glad we've been able to get those creative juices flowing.
Yeah, exactly.
And Ewen, I hope you'll join me again for a Photography Friday. I hope that we can get some more guests in and perhaps talk some of the technical issues and the challenges that people are getting in other locations and using the different setups that are available. I know somebody I spoke to I sought them out and was complimenting them on their pics, and she said, I've just got a cool pics. It's amazing what you can achieve with something that perhaps hasn't got a great Yeah. So, Ripper, are you happy for people to chase you up on Twitter, where, of course, you posted your Azua Kingfishers series from Swan Hill?
Yes, indeed. Come and find me on Twitter. What's my handle again? STER, Euster.
Oh, there's an S missing off the screen there.
Oh, well.
Actually, there's an extra E is what's happened. There's an extra E.
Oh, there's an extra E. One's got an extra S on it.
I did that in such a hurry. I rushed that background. I put this together like in the last couple of minutes before I jumped into the studio, and I noticed that I'd put a Sydney births, but I went back and checked it and fixed it.
Yeah.
So traps for young players is don't go and do things for hours before you are due to jump into a studio and have a chat. But there we go.
Perhaps the easiest way to find me is to not use Grant's artwork, but to look for the hashtag Swan Hill, and you'll find something I've done on there, I'm sure.
The easy way to find Ewen on Twitter is he's got this little yellow icon with a white cartoon dog. So that's a cat, is it? Oh, well,
it's
there we go.
It's a Prasheen.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm a cat person.
Oh.
I'm offended.
Cat person and a dog person.
Well, that's if you let them out, yeah.
Yeah, I like cats too, but indoors. Yeah.
If you keep them on the internet, they never need to go outside.
Yeah. That's exactly right. All the best cats are on the internet.
That's right.
But the key for finding Ewen, if you go to Bird Twitter and you watch it for a while, Ewen will pop up and it'll be a yellow icon and it's easy to find. Okay, thanks everyone. I forgot to tell everyone that I was Grant Williams. James is going to have his lunch shortly, and this has been Photography Friday on the Bird Emergency. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you'll come back for the next one. Uru.
Uru.
Uru.